Hello out there, and in front of you today is the QSP Phoenix, and this is a knife that I got through the pass around group that I'm in, so thank you to QSP for providing that. I am really deep in the weeds with with pass around knives right now, trying to get caught up on all the things that I've had in front of me, and this knife has certainly not helped that, because this knife, probably more than any that I've had in a long time, has just been a difficult knife to figure out. It's a good one, so let me tell you that right now. I'm happy with this knife. I really like it at the $50 price point. But today's video is going to be not really a set review or an overview or anything like that, or a comparison review even. It's going to just sort of be me riffing about some of the questions that this knife has made me ask. And it has sort of really made me rethink some of the ways that I compare knives to each other and the way that I assign value. And I'm not sure if I have any answers. I'm just gonna share a lot of the questions and see what you guys think. All right, and the first thing though to know about this knife is, again, at the $50 price point, I think that it's really competitive with the other stuff that is on the market. The first thing I thought of when I saw this knife actually was Bestech. You know, Bestech is making their like more budgety kind of line in the $40 to $50, $55 range with D2 steel, just like this, with G10, really similar to this. And yeah, even like the finishes on the blades, they're doing a lot of black flats and satin finishes on the grinds. So yeah, if you had just put Bestech right here instead of QSP, I would have believed it in a heartbeat. And the build quality and construction would have let me believe it as well. So that's definitely a compliment to what QSP is doing. It's a well-built knife. I do really like the size of it. It fits excellently in hand, and it's one of those knives that is just definitely designed for heavy use. The blade shape with just that little bit of belly, but almost a Wharncliffe. Definitely going to be really good for utility tasks, and yeah, I think even more so than some of the Bestechs that I've had. Like, this knife is really tuned in to doing a lot of work. You know, the Grampus is the one that I reviewed that I keep coming back to in my head, and I think I would prefer this knife over the Grampus, definitely. But the question that I have, and since I do see this knife in such a positive light, the question is, how good is it? And how am I really like structuring my value system? Because I pulled out this knife the other day, and that's when I really just started questioning myself. Because up here we have the Civivi Backlash. The Backlash for me was my second favorite knife of 2018. I never reviewed it because there's about 30 bajillion reviews out there that all say that this knife is just an excellent budget piece at the $40 to $45 price point is what you're going to find it at. And I agree. I mean, this knife is beyond excellent. But when you look at a comparison between these two knives with G10, the D2 steel on the QSP, for, you know, regardless of how good we and Civivi do with their 9CR18, I don't think that it's on par with D2. You just take a look at these two knives on paper and in specs, for $8 additional, the size of the knife and the steel quality. I mean, on paper, a lot of people might say that this is the better knife. And it's really hard to argue that. And when I look at this, like, how is this not going to be my number 2 knife of the year for this year? And it's not, and I have to try to rationalize that, and that's what all the back and forth is about, because there's so much when it comes to selecting knives that's subjective, and there's so much when you're watching these reviews, and when I watch reviews where, you know, I sort of have to take some things that people say, and even things that I say, with a grain of salt, and I have to watch multiple videos about a knife before I really get an understanding about it, because, you know, so much is going to be subjective, and this knife here really proves that, because as much as I like it, it isn't going to be one of my top 2 or 3 knives of 2019, and it wouldn't have been in the top 2 or 3 of 2018, even though on paper, yeah, I mean, it really does stack up nicely versus a knife like this. And the only thing that I can think when we're doing, like, you know, that kind of comparison is you look at some of like the little minute details about a knife, you know, the fit and finish. The fit and finish on the Backlash is just on a different level. The liners are just perfect. They look perfect. They're machined really well. One of the things that you won't notice, and even though it's perfectly well done, I mean, it's done really nicely on the QSP, and I'm talking about the detent and the action. It's a very smooth knife, but it's just dialed in here to a level that you don't really get on a $40 knife that often. You know, and so it's these intangible things, these things that aren't going to affect the cutting performance of a knife that sort of push it up the chart. And so the real question that I have is, for how many people does that stuff actually matter? You know? If I say that this is my second favorite knife of the year, which again it is, and that's not changing, but if I say that, and then this knife doesn't make a list, that can't in any way be indicative of these two tools and their ability to cut. It just isn't. You know, the steel on the QSP is better, and sure, there are going to be differences in grind and heat treat and all that stuff, but what I'm getting at is that when we get to that level of comparison, it's so subjective, and it's based on such tiny criteria that oftentimes don't affect the overall usability of the knife. And so I think from the functional standpoint, this knife is just an excellent, excellent buy. And while I don't think that it's going to like get on any, you know, top 10 list, and it might not be my favorite knife, I think that when you compare it to a lot of things, and when you think about what you need a knife for, this is going to excel and will potentially be something that a lot of people will be interested in. But while we're here, while we have it, now that kind of rambling is out of the way, hopefully that made sense to someone. If there's like 2 or 3 of you that are like still with me, then like it's a win. But for those of you who are still with me, let's just look at a couple other things about the knife real quick before we're done. So the only real nitpicky thing that I have about this knife is the jimping. The jimping could have been executed just a little bit better. You can see it's a little bit shallow. It doesn't grip the thumb as much as you'd want, especially considering that this is, at least in my estimation, a knife that, you know, you should really be able to bear down on and beat up on. All right, ergonomically, it's excellent, really, really comfortable in hand. The flipping action, like I said, super smooth. So we have some good stuff there. Reversible deep carry pocket clip, that's good. Sort of a weird filler tab that, you know, the fit and finish there isn't perfect. And I mean, you see that in a couple different spots on this knife. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that, like, I don't know who really cares about that, who's buying the knife. Maybe some people do. But, you know, if you're being nitpicky and you care about how clean the knife is, like, it's not perfectly clean. There's also a spot, and you might not be able to see it in the light, but that like coating is, you know, onto the side of the pivot. So yeah, not perfect, but if that kind of stuff is what separates this from a knife like this, then functionally, who cares? You know, and that's sort of what I'm getting at. Not in any way trying to say that this isn't as good a knife as it is, because we all know it, but practically speaking, I'm never going to care just how perfectly snappy and excellent and how finished the liners are when I'm breaking down a box. Just doesn't matter. And so if you're looking for a good $50 investment that is going to be able to break down probably a crap ton of boxes and just be a good tool for you, might not be the most perfectly pretty thing on the planet, but it's going to get the job done. I'd say this is a good one to go for. And I think QSP in general is actually, like, they're good at that stuff. So looking forward to seeing more from them. One more thing about the brand. I don't know if people just aren't seeing them as like legitimate yet, but the only places that I'm seeing their knives are on White Mountain Knives and on Amazon. So I haven't really seen them on places like Blade HQ or Knife Center or anything like that yet. So I think that day is coming because these guys are the real deal in my estimation. All right. So any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. Really appreciate you watching and handling that rant, rambling around all day. But yeah, thanks again, and I'll talk with you soon. Have a good one.